We took air travel to a whole new level when it comes to exclusivity.
4 Singaporeans go back in time to search for more answers from Singapore's past.
What was the experience on the Concorde like?
The pilots can actually see the curvature of the Earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
From tracking down a legendary white crocodile.
We have here the only mention of white crocodile, Buaya Putih, in the Straits of Singapore.
There's this element of, what's the truth there?
To uncovering what used to lie under an iconic building.
This green building here is very curious.
What we're looking at is the full extent of Kampung Glam, actually.
What else lies forgotten in the vault of time?
In the early days, you could just walk into a shop and buy a gun.
Wait, so back then, people could keep guns at home?
Oh, we had guns at home. My father was a gun owner.
Wow.
Watch Into the Vault 3 on demand at cna.asia.
Welcome back to Asia First. We're getting you a check on the U.S. futures. Remember, we saw a positive close to the session overnight. The Dow and the S&P 500 managed to eke out gains by the end of the session. And today, based on the futures market, we could see a further bump up. Now, in traders, they're focusing very much on the possibility of the economic reopening trades and that inflationary fear seems to be a bit of a growing pain concern now, despite the robust inflation numbers that we're getting of late. So that's boosted the energy as well, the industrial-related stocks, the NASDAQ. With the tech picture, we could see a bit of a bump up as well. But all this bodes well for the Asia-Pacific market. So we're seeing Singapore join in trading session on the front foot, 0.5% stronger. The Nikkei 225 is the top gainer. This is helped along by the weakness in the Japanese yen versus the greenback that tends to help Japanese exporters. So among the Japanese stocks, we're also seeing Toyota leading the advance, the automaker there. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate in Japan rose to 2.8% in April, higher than the 2.6% jobless rate in March. That also comes slightly worse than analysts' expectations. Economists say the data reflects a current mismatch in the supply and demand for labor in the Japanese economy. Recent purchasing managers' data have been pointing to a tightening labor market. Latest jobs-to-applicants ratio was at 1.09. That's slightly lower than the previous months on the back of that labor market friction. Looking ahead, Japan is expected to post a higher jobless rate this month as the extension of virus emergency measures in Tokyo and Osaka weigh on jobs demand, particularly in the services sector. Staying in Japan, shares of SoftBank shot up at the open in line with the broader market in Tokyo, up about 1.5% on SoftBank Group. Now, the Japanese conglomerate and tech backer is reportedly getting behind European buy now, pay later startup Klarna. The company is set to be close to a new funding round, and that could value it at $40 billion. If it goes through, the funding round will cement Klarna's status as the most valuable private tech unicorn in Europe, outshining the UK's Deliveroo. The news comes just ahead of an expected listing. Now, apart from SoftBank, other big-name shareholders include BlackRock and China's Ant Group. Buy now, pay later schemes have become increasingly popular during the pandemic as more people stay home and shop online. Klarna says merchants using its service report higher sales. Providers make their money from charging fees to either merchants or consumers. Other players include PayPal's Pay in 4 in the US, Afterpay in Australia, and Hula in Singapore. But regulators are concerned about this business model as it could encourage consumers to spend more than they can afford. According to one study, 4 in 10 consumers in the US who used a similar service have missed more than one payment. 7 in 10 suffered a decline in their credit score. Now, the UK and Australia are already reviewing or tightening rules around the industry, and some believe the service providers should be treated more like banks rather than fintech companies. Meanwhile, SoftBank has agreed a divorce deal with WeWork's founder Adam Neumann, this almost 2 years after a failed attempt by the office sharing firm to go public and the ousting of the startup founder. It wasn't an easy divorce, but Mr. Neumann got a new sweetener. According to the Wall Street Journal, securities filings show the former CEO was given an enhanced stock award worth $245 million, something that wasn't extended to other early WeWork shareholders. The payout is part of a negotiation of his 2019 exit package with primary investor SoftBank. It's meant to pave the way for a new effort to list the company as part of a blank check firm or SPAC. Mr. Neumann already received $200 million in cash earlier this year, and he was allowed to refinance $430 million in debt on favorable terms, among other benefits. Well, staying in the U.S., Senate Republicans are proposing spending far less than the $1.7 trillion that President Biden asked for in his infrastructure plan. They're narrowing it to $928 billion over 8 years, and both sides have been negotiating for months to break the impasse over the amount as well as how to pay for it. The latest proposal from Republicans is an increase from the original proposal of $568 billion over 5 years, and the plans dedicate funding to roads, bridges, and rail systems. The White House offer includes money for provisions that the Republicans say is not considered infrastructure. For instance, they cite the $400 billion set aside to care for elderly and disabled Americans as Biden seeks to, in his words, build back better.
I committed to an approach of building an American economy. A different economy, to build back better, not just build back better. That approach recognizes that we all do better, and we all do well. And the best way to grow our economy is from the bottom up and the middle out. You know, I don't have anything against anybody in Wall Street. I don't have anything against anybody making $1 million, but Wall Street did not build this country.
One of the major questions looming over the talks is how to pay for the spending. Biden proposes raising taxes on corporations to 28% from 21%, among other measures, and Republicans are opposed to any form of tax increases. Instead, one form of funding they're proposing is redirecting federal COVID-19 aid, which is opposed by Democrats. Negotiations now look likely to move into June. As for the budget for the next fiscal year, President Biden will seek $6 trillion for the national budget, according to the New York Times. And this rises to $8.2 trillion by 2031, pushing the U.S. to its highest levels of federal spending since the Second World War. Deficits are projected to run above $1.3 trillion through the next decade. The White House is expected to unveil the budget proposal later today. Ahead on Asia First, the UN Human Rights Council agrees to launch a probe into alleged crimes committed during the recent conflict between Israel and Hamas.
This is Game I make YouTube videos. While he does bespoke carpentry, I get up close with a new generation of local craft people.
Whatever it took to become a woodworker, I think I did it.
Starting with a furniture artisan.
If you're a CEO, the desk represents you.
Will I keep all my fingers? Handmade Tales, a brand new series, Sunday on CNA.
Breaking news.
Chanting for Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to step down.
Long live the people! We will be seeing sporadic protests flare up from time and time again.
Key developments.
37th ASEAN Summit.
Live events. Analysis and perspectives.
We will really be seeing vaccines soon.
Imports, which were expected to grow slightly, contracted 2.1%.
News that matters. Asia Now, daily. On CNA.
ちゃんは山梨名物のほうとう食べたいものぶれていません。
俺全部いつもオフかな。
そうやってなるんだ。いい話。
Japan Hour, Saturday on CNA. Japan Hour is brought to you by Sumitomo Corporation.